Welcome to Yury Experience, and today I want to talk to you about freedom of speech in different countries. I already did a video about freedom of speech and freedom of responsibility. I will link this video in the description because this video is kinda important for this one. You don't necessarily have to watch that one prior to this one, but that will bring you the reason why I even decided to make a kinda small list of reasons why freedom of speech doesn't really exist. Because at the end of the day, freedom of speech in this absolute, so in 100% you can say whatever you want, or you can express whatever you want, you can have each opinion and you can find each and every information, that stuff doesn't exist. And depending on the country, the situation of how free is speech actually is different. I will provide you a couple of restrictions with some association to some specific countries, but overall, there is not a single country overall that has complete freedom of speech. Almost. I will cover that in a moment. Let us begin. But obviously, prior to us going into the topic, I have to tell you that this is Yury Experience, and here I share my various experience about different topics. I do 2 videos per week, Mondays and Thursdays. If you will enjoy this video, please drop a like. You can also subscribe to the channel. Let's go. That is the definition of freedom of speech. What I mean by freedom of speech in this video is more or less freedom of saying or writing or sharing any possible opinion you have. You have freedom of expression through various forms of media, being it writing, being it posting on the internet, being it saying. You can also have no censorship prior and after you're expressing, and you can also have freedom of searching for various informations all over the world, the place, the internet, wherever. And the intention of this video, besides saying or making a point there is no freedom of speech in its absolute, is also to help you to live your life safer. Because at the end of the day, thanks to some restrictions of freedom of speech in some specific countries, you can die. And that's not a joke. You can say something on public platform and after that you will die. And I don't want you to have that experience. Not the nicest experience overall. Also, I have to tell you that this video covers law on some basic level. It's not moral, it's not ethics, and it's not this cancel culture, because even if law protects you, or it protects your free speech, it doesn't mean that you don't carry any responsibility for your words. Even if you can have some specific opinion, and if somebody will call you out on that, record you and go with you to the judge, and the judge will say no, that person can say that, even though that can happen, cancel culture can still find you and you will lose your job, your life and your whatnot. So responsibility and ethics and morals is one thing, laws is a completely different thing. The last part here in this second part of intro, there are countries which have full protection of freedom of speech, like the absolute form of it. But in reality, in some regions of that country, it is not the case. In some regions there are restrictions. There is no absolute freedom of speech in some given space in reality. Example for this one is USA. Although there is like First Amendment stuff and complete freedom of speech, it doesn't mean that there are no state laws or some restrictions to freedom of speech practically. So practically you cannot say whatever you want in USA. Technically, to some degree, you can try to discuss it, but there are enough cases, law cases in the past in order to tell you no. There is no complete freedom of speech in USA. Also, there are countries where freedom of speech is neither protected nor restricted, at least on the law level or governmental level. For example, Australia. But there are normally enough of law cases in the past which tell you, yes, although we don't restrict it overall, there are enough, you cannot do that. You shall not do that. Like, we still will throw you in jail, for example. So yes, although there is no restriction technically, there is restriction practically. Now let's cover international situation overall. There is an international treaty, that is kind of the name, where most of countries agreed so okay, we will have freedom of speech, we will do our best to not restrict our freedom of speech. But basically that's not a law. That's something like, yes, we agreed to it, but not we have to do it. But there's also an international law, this one, that 150 countries signed under, and technically they have to follow this law. But although this treaty and this law exist, both of them, and a lot of countries signed under them, still most of countries have some freedom of what they can allow and what they can restrict. That is basically why situation is different in different countries. Depending on the country, the laws in terms of freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, freedom of expression, freedom of from censorship and freedom of acquiring information will be different. And if you will move from one country to another country and you are a person in a public space, or if you talk to people who can record you and call you out and throw you into jail, or throw you to judge and judge will throw this person in jail, be careful. Know the country where you're currently in. Basically, even if you not move to another country, if you are just a tourist there, you need to know the customs of the country, and you need to know the laws of the country, at least to some degree, so you don't die. Again, you can die from wars. Now I will provide you 4 more or less common restrictions, or like groups of restrictions for various countries all over the world. I will not go really into detail, but I will provide you a couple of examples, according to my understanding at least. And if you want to know more, Google is there for you, at least in most of the countries, not in all of them. But if you don't have Google, you probably don't watch this video anyway, so yeah. The first category is critique of the state and or critique of government and or critique of the ruler and or call for revolution. All of these things are actually not allowed in a lot of countries, so the countries feel themselves safe. Obviously, the degree to which these things are prohibited in different countries are different, but in a lot of East Asian countries, East and East-South Asian countries, there you can pretty much, you cannot say anything about the state. So if you say something that can be interpreted as a critique of the state, critique of the country how it is right now, or critique of the ruler, or it can be interpreted as call for revolution, or we need to change something radically, yeah, you can go to jail, you can be dead, you can pay some money. It's like this typical stuff. And normally these restrictions are really broadly defined. For example, in India you cannot have an opinion that affects the integrity of India, and do with that information whatever you want. So if your information criticize economical state in India, then maybe it also is against of the integrity of India, so maybe you need to go to jail for that. Basically, these restrictions are the worst restrictions of them all, because thanks to them, the country can, or the government can tell you at each given moment, stop criticizing us, or we will kill you, or we will throw you in jail, or you will need to pay a big amount of money. And that's kind of way too much power for the government, and that's basically just denies the big part of free speech, like completely. Because a lot of people want to talk about government, about economical, political situation, social situation. And with these laws, you cannot do it. What I also need to add here is the fact that these restrictions are often not only for speech or for writing, but also for internet presence. So if you are on social media, if you do something over there, no, stop. Stop writing something that criticizes us. Based on my knowledge, most of other restrictions are not controlled as heavily as this one, or this group of restrictions. In the countries where these restrictions are in place, on a lot of occasions people don't have free internet, and if they have internet in some form, it's heavily censored. Like, if you write something down, you maybe have people who are calling you on the phone like 5 minutes later. Obviously it is an oversimplification, although I had a similar situation back in Russia with people writing on social media something that they shall not write, and the person got a message from police like 5 hours later, so it's not as much time, and that person just wrote something slightly critical in terms of event where we were, which was an international event. So the second category is decency, morality, nudity. Speaking of nudity, most of nudity on a lot of occasions is not allowed to be shared in some like common places. So on social media you cannot write like that in the open, especially in the places where people would not expect to see that. And that is basically connected to the fact that nudity, and each form of nudity, being it erotic or maybe porno, is not something that is seen as a good thing. Like, it's still, in terms of moral norms, really low. Although I disagree with it, but what can I do? But speaking of decency and morality, again, a lot of that has to do with social expectations, and also on a lot of occasions there's like some smaller organization under government that regulates specifically this stuff. So they decide basically, okay, this is something decent, this is something not decent, moral, not moral, or immoral. These definitions are normally also pretty broad, and depending on the situation and on the country, it is more or less understandable what falls under the category of decent and what falls under the category of not decent. So again, know your country, know the rules. The third group, which I will dedicate an independent video in the future, is hate speech. And that is basically most of kinds of interactions, being it talking or acting on doing something, which have some malicious intent in them towards different ethnic groups, different social groups, religious groups, and whatnot. Again, where is malicious intent and where is just critique of the group is, like, who knows? Depending on the country, the definition will be different. And this category is more in actually Western European countries and like North America countries, except for the case with religion. Blasphemy, or whatever, however you call this word, is a very bad thing for a lot of countries where religion has a really high position, being in theocracies and autocracies with high position of religion in the country. For example, in Iran, if you do blasphemy against Islam, then you will be killed. So yeah, but if you think only Islam countries do stuff like that, in Malta, if I'm not mistaken, it is prohibited to do blasphemy against Catholic Church, if I'm not mistaken. And again, I think you will not be killed, because Malta is in EU, and in EU it is forbidden to kill people, but so kill people in terms of justice stuff. But still you will do something, maybe go to jail or pay something, I'm not sure what exactly. And the last group of restrictions, the fourth group of restrictions, is denying history. And this is also really broad category, and the best example for that is denying Holocaust, which is not allowed in a lot of countries. What surprised me a little bit, it is not prohibited to deny Holocaust and also various historical events in Finland. Finland is also one of the freest countries in terms of freedom of speech, and it had like highest positions in several years, and that obviously includes freedom of opinion in terms of Holocaust and also other historical occasions. But not only Finland doesn't care or does care about historical occasions, a lot of European countries also agree on this idea with Holocaust, but there are also a lot of stuff with history, what happened, what didn't happen, what can you talk about, like which history we shall forget and which history is a good history which we support right now. Because denying history is not a new thing, it is a thing that a lot of countries use for their own profit. But yeah, it's nothing new. That is pretty much it. I know it is basic stuff, it's nothing new for a lot of people who have some international experience, but if you don't have international experience, I hope this video will be a starter point for you to understand, no, I cannot say whatever I want in each country I live in. Because In some countries you will die, in other countries you will go to jail, in third countries you will need to pay money or whatnot for just some opinions which would be okay in your own country. And technically, at least in the first thought that you shall have is, I need to respect the laws of the country. How good or bad the laws are is a different topic, and how much you want to try to influence the laws is also a different topic. But the laws are the laws. Again, laws and ethics are two independent things, except for the case where restrictions are going in the line with ethics. But what can you do? Be aware. Just know what you are talking about and know where you can talk about stuff and where you shall not talk about stuff. Because that can be a question of your safety. And if you think it is a joke, it is not a joke. People die, journalists die, people go to jail. There are enough countries where freedom of speech is something that they're supposed to be, but due to the governmental pressure, it doesn't happen. Government doesn't actually do anything, but they apply pressure, and that is more than enough on a lot of occasions. So again, just be careful. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Yeah.